here is a triangle. I want to go through and show you guys why the formula of an area of a triangle works. Now, for perimeter of a triangle, we don't have any special formula here that's going to help us out. So the perimeter, in this case, we're just going to add all the sides together. So add all sides. But for the area, we do have a formula for that. And I want to talk real quick about why it works. So take a look at our picture down here. We have a parallelogram. We know the height. We know the base. Now, I can get a triangle from this parallelogram. All I have to do is split it in half. I can go from one vertex to another, draw a diagonal like that. And if I split them apart, then now I have two triangles. Now, if I want the area of one triangle though, meaning that I'm going to be getting rid of this one, well, I got rid of half. I got rid of half of my parallelogram because remember, these two parts are congruent. If these two are congruent and I'm getting rid of one half, then that means I'm dividing it by two. So since I already know how to find the area of a parallelogram, base times height, area is base times height for a parallelogram. But since I'm dividing it in half for my triangle, I'm getting rid of one half. So that means I'm dividing it by two. So base times height divided by two. So that's one formula that I can use for area of a triangle. Alternatively, another option is 1/2 b base times height. These two mean exactly the same thing. This just says base times height divided by 2. This one says 1/2 times base times height. But remember, multiplying by 1/2 is the exact same as dividing by 2. You choose whichever one's more comfortable, or what I would recommend, get used to both. All right, so let's go through an example here. Now for the perimeter, like I said, we need to add all of the sides together. So I've got 23 up here, I've got 17 here, and I got 29 here. So for perimeter, I'm just going to add all those up. So I have 29 plus 17 plus 23. And I'm not good enough to do all this in my head, so I'm going to pull up my calculator. 29 plus 17 plus 23 gives me 69. So my perimeter is 69, and my units here are feet, so 69 feet. Now for the area, we want to recall our formula for area. I'm going to use base times height over 2. So first I need to identify my base and I need to identify my height. The one thing I might have forgotten to mention, you see this right angle here? Perpendicular. This line and this line are perpendicular, meaning that I have my height up here and I have my base here. So always remember, base and height are always perpendicular to each other. So here's my right angle here, which means this must be my base and this must be my height. So I'm going to plug it into my formula here. My base is 29. So I have 29. I'll put this in parentheses. I'll put the height, 14, in parentheses, divided by 2. So if I multiply 29 times 14, let's take a look. 29 times 14 is 406. Now I need to divide it by 2. That's what my formula says to do. And I press equal. 203. So my area here is 203. My units here are feet, so the area is feet squared, or square feet. 203 square feet. All right, let's continue. Trapezoid. There is a similar way we can use a parallelogram to derive the formula of a trapezoid, area of a trapezoid. Now for perimeter, again, I would just recommend adding all the sides together. But for area, we do have a formula there. So let's take a look at how one would derive the formula for area of a trapezoid. I start with my parallelogram here. Now what I'm going to do with my parallelogram, I'm going to split it in half again. But this time though, I'm not going to go from corner to corner. Instead, I'm going to choose a point somewhere on the perimeter, somewhere over here. and split it in the exact same place on the bottom side. So what happens is I end up getting a line like this. So this line here is going to be my separation. I'm going to cut my parallelogram right across this line. And so when I do that, and I split it in half, I have two trapezoids. Now, interestingly enough, because of the way I cut this side is the same as this length is the same as this length. And of course, my height is still the same in both trapezoids. So what this means is I have, again, two congruent trapezoids. But since I want the area of just one of these, I want to get rid of this one. Now recall the area of a parallelogram. Area of a parallelogram is just base times height, right? And our height is still the same, but look at our base though. Our base for a parallelogram was split into two pieces. So instead of just one B here, now we actually have two B's. And we'll call it B1 and B2 times the height. But we're gonna add one more thing here. Because remember, since I had two trapezoids, I'm getting rid of one. So it's like I'm cutting that one in half. Cutting in half, meaning I divide by 2. Therefore, our formula for area of a trapezoid, I have parentheses, base 1 plus base 2 times the height divided by 2. Now, the top one is traditionally base 1. The bottom is traditionally base 2, but honestly, it really doesn't matter whether this is base 2 and base 1 here. Because remember, since I'm adding them anyway, I'm free to flip those around as I wish. So base 1 and base 2, I add those together. And then I need to find my height. But remember, my height is perpendicular to my base. And in this case, it's perpendicular to both of my bases. And so I add these two, multiply it by the height, and divide by 2. Let's take a look at an example. I need to find the perimeter and the area of this trapezoid. Now for perimeter, I know the top is 10, and we know that that's going to be our base 1. So let's label it. That's our B1. We know the bottom here is our B2. But notice that only this part is 17 up to this height here. And this part is 6. So if I want the total B2, then I need to combine these. I need to add them. So 17 plus 6, that'll be 23. So my B2 is 23. Now you might be wondering why it's separated. Well, if I want to find perimeter, I need to know what this side is. But do I know what it is? Doesn't tell me anything. I have no idea what this side is. So I need to calculate that. I need to figure that out. And so the question is, what am I going to do to find that? Well, here's something interesting. Here's a blast from the past. If I highlight these three sides, I highlight this, and I highlight this, what kind of shape do I have here? If you said a triangle, you're on the right track, but what type of triangle? Ooh, since I have that right angle here, that makes it a right triangle. Therefore, since I know this is a right triangle, I have the option of using trigonometry, or in this case, since I have two sides, then I can use the Pythagorean theorem to find what that missing third side is. So that's what I'm going to do first. So let's label this x, and I'm going to start by finding what is x. So I know the Pythagorean theorem. I have my short leg, I have my long leg, and I need my hypotenuse here. So let's start with a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now I'm going to have my a is 6, so I plug that in. My b is 8, so I plug that in. And my c is x, so that's x squared. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. X squared is still x squared. I add these two and I get 100. So x squared equals 100. Now remember, that's x squared, but I don't want x squared. I want just x. So to cancel out that square root. So I want to square root both sides, and this is something that I do know. The square root of 100 is 10, which means that x is 10, which means that this side is 10. And since this side and this side are congruent, that means this is 10. Now I can find my perimeter. So I have 10 plus 10, and let me write it all down. So to find perimeter, I'm going to put P equals 10 plus 10 plus 23, our B2, plus 10, our B1. Notice that I didn't put 8 here because 8 is not on the outside of my trapezoid. 8 is on the inside, so it's not part of the perimeter. So now I have 10, 20, 30. 30 plus 23 is 53. So my perimeter here, 53, no units, so 53 units. All right, now for the area. Now the area is a lot more simpler because I already have the height. The height is right here. I have my B1, I have my B2, so I'm just going to call on my formula. I know the formula for area of a trapezoid is B1 plus B2 times H divided by 2. So I want to find my B1. I know my B1 is 10, so I'm going to plug that in. 10 plus my B2 is 23. My H is 8. So all this times 8 divided by 2. Now 10 plus 23 is 33. So I end up with 33 times 8 over 2. And so if I plug that into my calculator, 33 times 8, I get 264, but then divided by 2, I get 132 square units. So my area, 132. Now this is a little bit trickier only because of that Pythagorean theorem, but sometimes it's necessary. So always watch out for that. If you see a right triangle, you see one of your sides missing, then more than likely you'll use Pythagorean theorem here. I believe one of your assignments has a question like that, so keep an eye out for that one.